Yes.
I think I'm not supposed to be in this one. I think I'm supposed to be
I don't think you're Justin. All right, Justin, we'll get you where you're supposed to be.
Hi, Justin.
Okay. I was getting nervous, man, because I got questions prepared for Andrew. I'm like,
Yeah.
All right.
Wow. We see how it is. Yeah, no worries.
All right. So if you guys are ready to start, we are. So my name is Dylan Zielinski. I'm an executive producer here at WACS News. WACS News basically is a student-ran organization within the school where we cover news stories, anything big going on in the community. This year we're starting to branch out in a little bit of different ways, including our podcasts. That's why you are here, to give us advice. I will allow the other two people next to me to introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll go more into the podcasts.
All right, I'm Quinn Stolpen. It's nice to meet you guys. I am also an executive producer here, and I am a co-host with Dylan on the WGN podcast. And Aubrey is...
I'm Aubrey Mathewson. I'm just a news editor, and I am a solo podcaster for Thank You 5.
Which is
a theater podcast.
So I guess quick backgrounds on both of the podcasts. WGN stands for WACS Good News. It started off last year with when quarantine first happened. My good friend Zach Bennett and I kind of, I guess you could say, borrowed the idea of SGN from John Krasinski and threw the WACS News logo on it and called it ours. And we started doing Zoom meetings and stuff, talking about good news. And then this year, when Quinn and I brought up the idea of doing podcasts, we thought it'd be a good idea to bring it back. So like we said, we cover general news, have conversations with we've had 2 conversations with a teacher and then a principal and then a student. And honestly, it's just supposed to be there to like make people laugh and put a smile on their face. Aubrey, if you want to give a rundown.
So my podcast is called Thank You 5. It's a theater podcast. It's fairly new. I just started it 2 weeks ago. I'm filming another one today, so this will be good for that. I'm starting in the community. So right now we just started our new production of Shrek. So I'm going to kind of talk about that. And soon I want to branch out, but yeah, it's kind of.
So that's all we have to say. If you guys want to, I guess, introduce yourselves, or if you want to, I think you said her name was Becky, right?
Yeah.
Did she make it in, or?
Yes.
I don't know.
Doing.
She's Canadian, so she might just be having international difficulties.
But yeah, like I said, if you guys want to introduce yourselves or wait for her, that's up to you guys.
Hi, everybody. Justin, Crook, you're stuck in this room. I can't reassign you. Hopefully you're having fun.
Can you just hang up? Tell them to just hang up.
Oh yeah, like should I just hang
the other section recording? But unless I stop everybody's room, I can't move you from one thing to another because Microsoft is on.
Serious?
All right, that's it. Continue. Forget that I was ever here. Goodbye.
Where are you going, Tom?
Dang.
Wow.
Well, you can ask us your questions for the other guy. We'll answer them as best we can.
Yeah.
It'll be
stuff. So
I'm all geared up for this other guy, man. I'm like, I got my Bills flag.
I know. Sorry.
Mafia flag, man. I was all ready for it, man. But
yeah, this is definitely the wrong audience for that, but we appreciate you.
We appreciate it.
Justin, I just gave Mr. D an idea of how to relocate you, so he's gonna maybe pop back in. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you guys want to introduce yourselves, I guess, or wait, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I think we can just keep going because I know we have a limited amount of time. We'll get Becky in here, hopefully, if she can join. I'll go first since I'm already talking. Pat, Sandor, and Aston, part of the When's Food crew. My background is actually in broadcast communications. So in college, I studied broadcasting. I worked on our my college's radio station, TV station. After college, I moved to New York City. I worked for NBC for like 6-7 years. Worked for a couple other startup websites, doing like interviews, writing content, doing video production as well. Moved to Buffalo in 2014, and I've been working for the Martin Group. It's an advertising agency in Buffalo as an account manager for the last 3 years. Content-wise, besides doing the podcast, I recently retired a YouTube channel that I did with my husband for many years. So dabbled in the YouTube world as well. And now I work my day job and I record When's Food podcast with these 3 other, politely I say call them idiots, because that's what we call them. Good peeps. Lindsay, would you like to intro yourself? Great background too, by the way.
Yeah. So my name is Lindsay Robson, and I have a background in marketing. So like 100 years ago when I was in college, social media didn't exist. So my degree is in public communications, and then just, throughout the years, social media started getting bigger and bigger. And my first, like, quote unquote, big girl job was doing social media and marketing for the Boulevard Mall. So I handled all of their social media accounts, ran the special events, all that good stuff. And while I was working there, I started my blog called Nickel City Pretty. It started out as like a fashion blog and then kind of morphed into more of like a everything local kind of thing. So like any kind of special events, news, local business owners, just kind of like networking and getting out into the community. And through that, I also started the Buffalo Blogging Network. So when I started blogging, there really wasn't too many bloggers locally. But then, over the years, I started seeing more and more people coming out of the woodwork. And I'm like, okay, maybe that there should be a place for all of us to network and just kind of meet up. So pre-COVID, I would hold monthly events. So all of the bloggers in the city would get together at different businesses and just network with each other and just have a good time and, Instagram about it pretty much. And then through the blogging network, my latest job that I had, I hosted an event with Perry's Ice Cream, and through their marketing department, I got a job working there doing their social media and marketing as well. So their Instagram account, Twitter, Facebook, content creation, and as far as with the podcast goes, Pat was handling production. I was handling any kind of sponsorships that we had. So, every episode we try to have a specific sponsor. So I would either reach out to companies, either local or national, and or they would reach out to us, and then I would kind of handle like the back and forth between us and the businesses. So that's my role on the podcast. Next to idiot Nick. Take it away.
Hello, I am also an idiot. My name is Nick. I am a graphic designer. I currently am a graphic designer for Oshai Children's Hospital here in Buffalo, and the foundations that are wrapped in that healthcare system. So that kind of is what translates to what I do for When's Food. Other than speak on the podcast, I do all of our branding and design. I make the graphics that we share on social media and just kind of make everything look pretty and goopy, which is a key element of our brand that we love, goops. So yeah, that's kind of my component. When we were building When's Food in its early stages, we just kind of all looked at our soft skills and how they could combine together. Like Pat and Lindsay both said, they had these professional skills that they could add to our podcast beyond just using their voice talent to kind of help bring it to life. And I did the same. And speaking briefly for Becky, she has a huge background in video and audio content creation. So it was a really easy fit for her too. Like she takes all of our recordings, puts them together, and produces the episodes when we upload them. So that's kind of how each of us finds our lane and works together to make When's Food possible.
So thank you for one. Can you guys give us a quick rundown of what your podcast is? Like, what is When's Food?
Yes. The real title of it should be Screaming Opinions is what we should call it, but it's not as catchy as When's Food. But we decided to start the podcast a few years ago after we went in Rochester. There's an event called Upstate Social Sessions where social media professionals, meet. There are different presentations, breakout sessions, very similar to this. We listened to one of the breakout sessions was specifically about podcasting. There are two women in Rochester who have a podcast called Queen Speaking. And so they were just talking about how they started, how they maintain it, fielding audience questions of like, what technology do you use? What products? Like, how do you come up with episodes? How do you think of guests? All that kind of stuff. And we left, the four of us on When's Food all kind of create in our own different ways, whether it's on social or video or design or whatever. And we were like, we feel like we could do a podcast, but we all are, we work day jobs. We're working on side projects too. So like, how are we going to do it? And we just sort of realized, well, with the four of us, we each had a unique skill set that was very applicable to not only like producing a podcast, both in the content and the technical, recording, editing, jazzing it up with the effects and music and things, but also being able to create the social media presence that goes behind it so that it gets some traction, gets attention, promotion, that kind of stuff. So like, we feel very Avengers-like with our podcast. It just happened to work out that the four of us collectively had, a pretty nice roster of skills. The podcast itself, I don't know, Lindsay, how would you describe it?
So, like Pat said, after Upstate Social, we're like, well, we think we're pretty funny, and we think that we could talk about stuff and that people would listen to us. So we're called When's Food because anytime that we go out to any event or anything, we're always like, okay, when's food? Like, when are we going to eat? Because that's like the most important of everything is when are we going to eat food?
Yeah.
So we kind of have like a little flow of how our episodes go. So number one, we decided that each episode is just going to have a singular word as the title. So like sandwiches, opinions, cookies, that kind of thing. And then we just like kind of flow from there. We have like a loose idea at the beginning of each episode of what we're going to talk about. And then we just kind of let it organically happen. I think one of the coolest things about us is that we have a really good dynamic that we play off of each other well. So one of us is going to say an opinion and then the other is going to hate it. And then the other person's going to call the other person out. And it just kind of like naturally flows, which I think is pretty cool. And then we like to throw a couple little extras in. So we have a couple games that we like to play. So Yuck or Yum is one of them where, one person says a food item and then we all vote like Yuck or Yum. Also, I do a thing called Snack Facts that Pat hates. He hates them, where we're talking about a food topic and then I just find random weird or disturbing facts about that food. Junior, what are the other, I can't remember the other games that we do, Yuck or Yum and...
when we have Take It Back, when one of our strong opinions is proved wrong by someone else.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Probably other things. I don't know. We play games. It's fun. We make up stuff. You won't learn anything, but you'll have a good time.
The takeaway there for us was figuring out, like when we decided we wanted to start it, we wanted to create the name and like the episodes to be, it needs to have some kind of structure, right? And I'm sure you guys are learning that. Like why am I making this podcast and why would people listen to it? And how do you create the longevity in the content so that you can continue to have more episodes? Some podcasts are very contained or they're like a short run. You might be telling a specific story and there's going to be 8 episodes, 10 episodes. Some are really tied to the news. And so you kind of know, well, with each episode, we just kind of talk about whatever's going on. Mm-hmm. Ours is like a little bit in that middle space where we do pick a single topic per episode, but what we talk about within there can go all over the place. So for us, putting the structure to it was knowing like we structured in 2 commercial breaks each episode. We know each episode is between like 30 and 45 minutes, depending. And we know that we always sort of close out with one of our, franchises, one of the games, or something that's like, that's what people can expect. So we build the expectation in of like, what a When's Food episode entails. so people can become familiar with it. It also works in our favor because it's not really so tied to like current events, as you can really drop in to listen on any episode that you want. You don't have to listen to some of the previous episodes to understand what's going on. So that's sort of how we created the structure of it, so we can keep it alive.
Awesome.
Did Justin say that? Or was
I
that
think
Mr. D?
I don't know. So if we are going to open up, I guess, the conversation, like the questions and the conversation time. So I guess, Aubrey, if you'd like to go first.
I have one actually, real quick. So when you guys first started the podcast, I know in our opinion, and I have like a side one that I do with a couple of friends on my hockey team, and I had the same experience for both of them, that it was like the first episode was sort of like awkward and tough to get like a conversation. I didn't know if you guys kind of had, we don't really have that problem as much now, but I didn't know if you guys struggle with that too.
Yeah, I think that once you start something for the first time, it's going to be awkward and you're not really going to know what you're doing. Yeah, that pretty much goes with anything. But I think the important thing is that you just started it, right? So you had an idea and you're like, okay, let's just execute it and then see what happens as you go along. So I'm sure, well, I can guarantee that our first like 1 to 3 episodes were a hot mess. But as we kind of go along and decide, okay, like this is the structure that we want to do. We're comfortable with this. We're comfortable recording X amount of episodes a week. And, things are always going to change, obviously, with, life. I mean, we've had to go completely virtual due to the pandemic. So I think it's being flexible and kind of just growing and, moving as you go along.
Yeah. One of the things that we found out when we were sort of just assessing, like, what's everybody's skill set or how can we all contribute in our own way. So when we're recording, my role mostly takes place while we're actually recording, and I'm pretty much the moderator of the podcast, for lack of a better word. I'm the whoopee of the view. So my task is I keep the time. So I'm running a stopwatch while we're recording. I tend to be the one who introduces the episode. And what I'm doing beyond also, participating in the conversation, what works in our favor is because there's 4 of us and it's a podcast where you can't see us. A lot of times I'll throw out a question to the group, or I'll call on one of the other hosts to answer a question. While they're answering, I'm thinking of the next topic or watching how people are reacting. So I'm sort of air traffic controlling the conversation. So to your point, when you're like, well, how do you keep the conversation going? That's a lot on me to make sure that I have prompts for people if to keep us going. Now, granted, our podcast is a little different because there's the same 4 of us. We don't have guests or anything like that. So now we have a pretty good flow. We have a nice rapport with each other where if there is a moment of lull, someone is bound to jump in. If it's not me, someone else is going to be able to keep it going. So it's like building up, with any sort of like team, building up the rhythm and the rapport that you have with your co-host.
I think it's important too to point out that like outside of just the recording studio, like we are friends and social with each other. So we kind of already have that chemistry, and like, even between recordings, we, if we're sitting down just having dinner, it's basically like we're recording an episode anyways, because we're already screaming about opinions during dinner, and we just remember them during when we record. So like kind of, I don't know how you and your friends do it per se, but like if you just sit down and start recording like the minute you walk in the door, that maybe give yourself some like 10-15 minutes to like almost warm up, just like you would with like before your game, because that'll get like your chemistry build up, your interactions with each other kind of like tuned up and like ready to like actually dive in and record, instead of just like turning on the mic and going. We always like jab at each other and like make fun of something or another before we actually start recording the episode.
Right, that makes sense. Okay.
I guess I do have a question. How do you guys keep, I guess you could say, like, viewers interested and like viewers entertained? Like, how do you keep bringing them back?
Do they keep coming back, Pat?
Yeah.
What viewers?
I think it's about our personalities help. I don't mean to, talk up ourselves. I feel like at least our content is light, kind of stupid, kind of fun. It's designed, am I describing it correctly, Kyle? It's designed to make people kind of angry at our opinions. That's part of the four of us sharing our thoughts, is that we sometimes, it's genuine, but we also lean into our opinions heavily, which not only gets each other riled up, but we know that from getting feedback from our friends who listen, like, oh, I was screaming at you, like, pineapple on pizza is delicious. Like, I can't believe you said that. And like, so we know that we're poking at people a little bit. So I think that helps get people interested. We also are careful that the format of each episode is very similar. So that people, like I was kind of saying before, people have an expectation. They know what they're going to get when they drop in for an episode, whether it's because the length is the same or the rhythm, the segments are the same. So it becomes, we wanted it to become familiar as you listen to it, so you can kind of, pick it up whenever you have 30 minutes, 45 minutes free.
And also, I think that we're pretty good with engagement.
For bowling sectional.
That's not us.
Sorry, there
That's
was
not
an
us. Sorry about
announcement.
that.
We like to engage with the audience. So we ask questions on our social media. We recently started doing host episodes. So we did a Pat episode and we did an episode about me where we had our followers ask us questions like about ourselves. So, anything that they wanted to ask us, anything they were curious about, they were able to, and then we answered the questions on the podcast. So, as with anything like building a brand, building a podcast, just making sure to engage with the audience, either, via your episodes or via social media, I think is one of the biggest things you can do.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I will say too, that's really helpful when you're recording a podcast, and like podcasts are, a lot of them have video components to it now, people recording themselves while they're doing it. The thing that I find really helpful is to remember that, like, for our podcast, there's four of us, but we have to imagine that the listener, like the fifth person, is sitting in the room with us. So really making sure that we're not only directly talking to each other, but that we know that there are people, we have an audience, even if we can't see them. So we speak in a way that makes people feel included in the group. If you guys seen the meme of the guy sitting next to the poster with like eating ice cream, and it's like me listening to podcasts. Like, we want people to feel like they are in the room with us. They can scream their opinions back. We can't hear them, but making sure that it's not just between us in the room. I think that helps people feel like they're engaged with what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of mentioned, one of you guys kind of mentioned how the social media definitely helped your viewers come back. How did your website and social media help get the word out about your podcast? Then do you have any tips on any of the social media aspect?
So what I think actually helps is that the four of us, we're not only on the podcast, but we all have pretty big social media followings ourselves. So when we first started podcasting, we blasted it all over our own social medias, and then having our friends also promote us, I think, was a big help. Our moms all promoted us. Our moms are our biggest critics. And one of the coolest things was actually when we had initially started our podcast, the Taste of Buffalo reached out to us, and we were able to do a live podcast at the Taste of Buffalo, which was pretty neat. So, working with other bands, working with local events, I think just helped us reach audience that we wouldn't normally reach. So, doing that was really cool for us.
Yeah, it was also about, we knew as professional marketer individuals that we needed our brand and our presence to look legit from the beginning. We wanted people, whether they were finding us on episode 1 or if they're just finding us now 60 some episodes later, that it looks legit. It looks like, oh, this is a real podcast that's out there, that is professional, that has the look and feel to it. So it was important to us to secure, even when we were coming up with a name, of the podcast to secure the domain, all the social media handles. You definitely don't have to do that, but for us, we were like, we're gonna do this like the way that we know is gonna have the most impact. So it's a lot of it is just there to like reassure people that this is a real podcast. I hate to use that way, but use that term. So it feels legit, and that definitely helps us, I think, when we are contacting or in communications with sponsors and things like that. It shows like we take it seriously, we know what we're doing, we're professional, and you could be proud to like align with us for a sponsorship because we are buttoned up.
Yeah, and I think Nick, as our designer, he even made us like stickers, and we even had T-shirts. So hopefully, merch will be coming soon. There you go.
I think too, like even beyond like I know that you guys do a lot of them like in class, but also like in your free time. I think there's ways to connect with audience members. Obviously, a podcast isn't visual, but like kind of like in the same way where like a sequel of a movie or the next episode of series like leaves you hanging for the next one. Like you could do that too with some of your content, and kind of we bring up past episodes a lot. It's kind of the reverse for us from what I said. Like we'll reference past episodes. Like that one time, like Lindsay.
Nick, can I interrupt you for a sec? I'm so sorry. I just want to let you know that we have about a couple more minutes at 11:40. We'll come back together. So if you want to get your best question out and wrapped up, you're gonna get rudely booted out of this breakout room in about 2 minutes. Okay, bye.
Super. Yeah. Do you guys have anything pressing to ask us?
I guess our major question could be what can we improve on? I like ways of making it just
tips for
tips, like how can we improve?
I'll give you a couple. I listened to a couple of your episodes. Like you guys are doing great, and just the fact that you started is like the biggest hurdle. So props for just go, right? You're always going to get better. My tips would be practice. The more you get comfortable, obviously, with talking, with leading those conversations, with asking questions, you're going to get better. One thing that I would point out specifically is for you guys after listening, remember that people are listening. They can't see who's talking, and they might not be familiar with you or your voice. So sometimes it's important to use people's names if you're asking a question, like, hey, Nick, what did you think? Or like, Lindsay, what's your opinion on this? And you remember that people might be listening for the first time. So if there's information to you that's like known to people who are listening to the podcast, sometimes it's good to drop a reminder as to like what you're talking about. So, for us, if it's talking about like our husbands or something, for Lindsay, we'll say like, Lindsay, your husband, Nicholas, he does da-da-da, to remind people who, just help people feel included versus excluded. Sometimes that goes a long way when they can only hear you versus see you. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great. And I think like Pat said, just keep practicing, just keep doing it. It's going to keep getting better and better and better. And that way you'll just like find your hook and just kind of find your niche with where you want to settle. Because it took us a couple episodes to just be like, all right, this is actually who we are. It's not like creating a new personality. It's just honing in on, okay,
what the heck just happened?